Hey guys, and welcome to a new series of mine. I think I introduced the second episode that way, but I'm recording these in reverse order because I forgot to do this part of the second episode. Sorry. But welcome to a new series of mine. We're going to be doing builds. What to do with them, what not to do with them, and yeah, it's gonna be for very basic people who have never played the game before, who are like, well, you know, I don't know what to do. My characters keep dying, or I don't feel like I'm doing the best that I can. So, let's get into it, but this time, we're going to be talking about stats and what they can do for different types of builds. So, without further ado, let's sit down and look at stats. And I'm sorry that, things are a little different here than what you guys are used to, but, I'm using this character to kind of make some points. Okay, the first stat we're going to talk about is Vitality. Every build should use this. Level it up. Good day. Now, we're going to talk about Attunement. Attunement is only really important for three kinds of people. The first are sorcerers. It's very important for sorcerers that you level up Attunement. It allows you to use more spells, and I think it'll be 1 or 2 levels in Attunement that'll give you 1 Attunement slot. So, Attunement is good for sorcerers who need to use a lot of magic. Attunement is good for faith builds who need to use a lot of miracles. That's also very important, though it's not as important as it is for sorcerers, because sorcerers need a very wide array of spells, whereas miracles, there's a lot of good ones, but you're not going to necessarily use all of them, so you don't need it necessarily. You're probably going to be wanting to put a lot more into faith than into intelligence for a sorcerer, you know? Wait, let me clarify that. It seemed a little convoluted. What I mean is, you're going to be putting more into faith for a faith build than you are intelligence into an intelligence build. And at least at first. Obviously you want these two stats to be at 40 at some point when you're doing those builds, but it takes less intelligence to use spells, even though it takes a lot, don't worry, than it will for faith. Now, let's talk about endurance. Again, this is a stat that everyone should get, but it varies on when you should get it depending on what kind of character you want to play. If you're going for a very heavy armor setup, you want to be leveling up Vitality and Endurance a lot until you get a weapon that you really like, and then you want to level up for that. If you're going for a light armor setup, it's not as important as getting Dexterity, because usually those are the kind of weapons you want to use, but it's still pretty dang important. And for a sorcerer, Endurance is not very important. I mean, again, obviously you want to max all these out at some point. Don't think about that. Think about when you want to get these. Endurance is not as important for a sorcerer. It's useful, but you're going to want to be staying away from enemies, and I'm talking about PvE here, player versus environment, so the game, not other players. As a sorcerer, you're going to be staying away from people, and generally you're going to be blasting them with spells, unless you use something like Magic Weapon, which, okay, whatever. The same goes for Vitality for Sorcerer. Not as important, though I'd say it's more important than Endurance, especially if you're dying a lot. It's very important. Strength. Only good if you want to use a Strength type weapon. And you want to know how you can tell a Strength type weapon? It's Giant. These weapons hit hard, move slow, and are very heavy. For instance, the Zuihanda here, a personal favorite of mine, is very heavy and a very good heavy attacker. And you can see, skills C with strength and requires 24 strength to wield. So strength for a heavy armor user and for a heavy weapons user is very important. And now, why do I say that it's important for a heavy armor user? Well, generally when you put on heavy armor, you're gonna be slowed down. Now, generally the idea with I don't know why I went back to this. Generally the idea with heavy armor is to have a lot of poise and a lot of defense. So for instance, something like Havel's armor gives you the most amount of poise in game, and also is very heavy. So for instance, you can see, I mean, we're at the heaviest roll here, and if we get rid of our Zuihanda and go for the Scimitar, we're or mid-rolling. I mean, it's not good. You never really want to mid-roll, because mid-rolling, it gives you more invincibility frames than heavy rolling, but what am I trying to say? It's not worth it. You want to go for one or the other, generally. Unless you're trying to level up to a certain point, then it's okay to mid-roll. But otherwise, you kind of want to either have fast roll or heavy roll, because you want to get used to whichever one you're using. And so, generally, the idea behind heavy armor, for using a heavy weapon, is that you want to be able to take a lot of hits and attack through them, to deal damage to your opponent, who you hope does not have as much defense as you do. Now, you can also see, the only reason we were mid-rolling is because we had Havel's ring on. So, for instance, if I put on the Chloranthy ring and get rid of the Zuihanda, we're heavy rolling. And let's just put on Wolf Ring. We know what that does. By the way, I'm not explaining rings in this video. I will just be explaining stats, what they do, how they're useful. Okay. So strength, used for very heavy weapons, dexterity used for very light weapons. Now, that brings me to what dexterity actually does. Dexterity allows you to use lighter weapons, and is very important for bows, scimitars, and things like that. Very important for light builds, because dexterity weapons are very light generally, so you can fast roll with them. But it also, a lot of weapons scale with dex, so even if you have if you're going a strength build, getting a decent amount of dex is good, because, and I'm actually doing hand gestures with this, I feel empowered. Getting a good amount of dex is important because, as you can see, my beloved Zweihander scales D with dex, which, oops, isn't a lot of damage, but it's something, you know. Now we can see the claws here scale A with dexterity and E with strength. So, again, the goal for a light armor setup is going to be, let's put on some pants, I don't want to disturb you guys. The goal for a light armor setup is to not get hit. You want to always be avoiding attacks, and you always want to be dealing out damage where you can. It's a lot more about being patient and about taking attacks where you can, and it's a lot more about parrying. And dexterity allows you to do that. Dexterity allows you to be a little more patient with these different kinds of weapons, and allows you to be a little bit calmer with them. Whereas with heavy weapon setup, I didn't realize you could parry with these. I thought that was a strong attack. But yeah, whereas with a heavy weapon setup, you're very just kind of either turtling behind a shield or you're hitting a lot. Okay. Resistance. It's a weird stat. It's going to increase all of these resistances over here, which is useful, but if you're in regular game, you've never beaten the game before, I don't want you to touch resistance. It's going to increase your defense, but if you're getting killed a lot, upgrade your vitality instead of resistance. Or get heavier armor or better armor. But don't touch resistance until you're in New Game or New Game Plus. Otherwise, just not going to be very useful for you. I guess the only time that I could see it being useful is if you keep getting cursed by the basilisks in the depths. That's the only time I can see it being useful, but I think it's just a waste of a level. Just upgrade your vitality if you're getting killed too much. Don't upgrade your resistance. Now, intelligence. Intelligence is the most important thing for a caster. Or a sorcerer, I should say. A caster will always be using intelligence, and I actually recommend that you level up intelligence with your first couple of levels. Now, if you're playing this for the first time and you're playing as a sorcerer, don't listen to that. Upgrade vitality and endurance. But for people who are just trying new builds, definitely leveling up intelligence early on is key, because it'll unlock you new spells, it'll allow you to use spells more effectively, and it'll also allow you to use more powerful catalysts. Which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the catalyst is a thing you shoot spells from. Okay. You want to max out intelligence as early as you can, but you also don't want to avoid endurance and vitality for these when you're going for an intelligence build. Intelligence builds are powerful, later on, but they're very weak early on. So leveling up intelligence as quickly as you can is good, but it also plays into that weakness with less endurance and less vitality. And now faith. Faith, if you're going for a faith build, faith is very important. But otherwise, you're not going to want to have a lot of faith. It's kind of like intelligence in this sense. And attunement. If you're not going for a faith or sorcerer build, you're not going to want a lot of attunement, faith, or intelligence. Maybe just for basic spells like heal. Heal's very useful. I use it a lot when I'm doing when I'm helping other players when I'm being summoned. It allows you to heal yourself during combat when you're in their world, whereas you can't use Estus. Sorry guys for popping my knuckles. Shouldn't do it while I'm recording. But if you're doing a faith build, definitely want to upgrade your faith. Very much so. It'll allow you to use blessed weapons or divine weapons a lot more easily. It'll allow you to do a lot more damage with them. And it'll also allow you to use better miracles, like the Great Sunlight Spear. Things like that. I don't really know what else to say, guys. It's just, I hope that kind of covered the basics. If I didn't, for the guy who asked for this series, if I didn't cover your question, tell me what I need to cover, and I'll definitely try to cover it. I'm not the best at this kind of thing, especially talking about different builds. I usually just go for strength builds, but I hope I covered at least something useful. So tell me what you think, and if you have any questions, ask me, and I'll make sure to address them. I'll see you guys next time.